So in this video, we'll be talking about one of the most important methods you'll have to learn about JavaScript arrays, and that will be the method called map. So let's see how that actually works. I'm going to copy this array from here so we don't have to create a whole new one. I'm going to do function map method. Obviously, doesn't matter what you call this function, but I'm going to just create this array so we can see what's going on here. So I have this array, and as you can see, it's like a two-dimensional array. Let's actually create another one that will be like a single-dimensional array. So let's do var one-dim one-dimensional array, and it would just be this. So I'm going to start with one-dimensional array, and then I'll go to this two-dimensional array, and I'll show you some methods that we need to know. So the method we're going to discuss right now is map. Now, if I use this variable for this array, if I do dot, it's going to give me a lot of methods for this, and one of those methods is map, right? And what this map method does, it will actually accept a function callback, what it's called. So you'll see what that means in a second. So what it's asking you for is to give it a function. So for example, let's say the function we're going to use on this is add dash, something like that. So that function is not defined. We don't know what that add dash means. So that means we have to create that function. So I'm going to create that function. So I'm going to do function add dash. Something like this. So now we define this add dash function that we're going to use, and we're calling that function on this one-dimensional array. Now this function is going to return another array. So let's create that variable, new one-dim array. So that's going to be this. And then in the end, we'll log this new one-dimensional array to see what it is that we're getting out of this. So let's see what this map method does. So map method is going to do something with every single element of this array. So what I want to do, I want to add a dash in the end of each one of this. I want to have Linda dash, then 27 dash, and then Chicago dash. That's kind of what I'm going for here. I'm going to go here inside of this add dash. That's our function we're passing to this map method. And then I'm going to just call this row. Let's just not call it row. Let's call it item for now. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to return. So this item, what it's going to be in this map function, it's going to be every time one of these items in our array. So the first time is going to be Linda, then it's going to be 27, then it's going to be Chicago. So we're running the same function over and over, which is this add dash, for every single item in this array. And then we're getting a return from that function, and we're creating another array. So let me show you what I mean. So let me just return 0. So I'm returning a 0 from this add dash. So this is the function. So basically what we're saying, let's take this function and pass this Linda item here. So this is going to be the parameter Linda. And then we're not really doing anything with Linda. We're just returning 0. So our function returns a 0. So if I just run this, and this is called map method. If I view the log, see what I'm getting is 0, 0, 0, 3 zeros. And what I did, I basically passed the first item to this function add dash, and that function returned a 0 the first time. Then I passed a 27, that function returns a 0 again, and Chicago, the function returns a 0 again. So basically meaningless stuff. So now what I can do, I can make this more meaningful by doing something with this variable that I'm passing to it, with the actual item. And I can say, this is the item. Let's take that item and concatenate a dash if I look at my log, see, I'm getting Linda dash 27 dash Chicago dash. So I took each value and I ran something with this function and I got a new value, and by that I'm creating a whole new array with those values. So let's do something different. Let's say these are not like mix of text and numbers. This is just 3 numbers. So I'm gonna go here. We have 3 numbers. So what I want to do, I just want to take every single number and multiply it by 2 and get a new array that will be like 6 and then 27 times 2, right? So that's 54 and then 14. I'm going to take this and I'm going to say, let's take the item, which in this case is going to be first time 3, then 27, then 7, and I'm going to multiply it by 2. So if I run this map method, I go back and look, see the new array is 6, 54, and 14. So I'm basically running some operation over each one of these numbers, and I'm getting a new array that I'm returning back. So now let's try to do this with a 2-dimensional array. So I'm going to make this a comment. And we have, actually I'm just going to delete it. It's good enough. So we have this array and we are going to just do something with this array. So now we have a 2-dimensional array instead of a 1-dimensional array. So if we do that name of that array and do dot, and we're going to do map. And again, if it doesn't show up here, that's fine. It's still going to work. So don't worry about that. I'm going to still use that function called add dash. And I'm going to create a new variable. I'm going to call new array equals this, and then we'll just log out that array. The thing is that now, because this n array is a 2-dimensional array, the actual items in this array, the first item is this whole array. The second item is this, which is this whole array. And the third item is this, which is this entire array. So what that means is that now when we have this add dash function and we're passing this item, the item is this entire array. So I'm going to call that a row because that's really our first row in our data set. So I can take that row and do something with it. So let's say I want to take, again, everybody's, what is this, age, I guess, and add 1 to it because everybody grew up. So the way I'm going to do that, I need something that will have, again, 3 items, and this is going to run 3 times, this map function, because it's going to run for the first time for this, 2, and 3. And those 3 items are also going to be arrays. It's going to kind of be looking the same, only this 27 should have been 28. I'm going to return an array because every single item is still going to be an array. And the first thing should be this, which is Linda. So that Linda is, well, this whole thing is going to be this row right here. So I'm going to take that row and say, let's get the first item in that row. So the first item in this entire row is Linda. And then actually the next time is going to be this row, which is going to be Lisa and then Pete and so on. So that's going to be the first item, the name, comma. The second one is going to be this number 27, right? So that's still going to be from that row, but it's the second item, which is item number 1. Now I want to take that and I want to add 1 to it because I want to increase the age by 1. And then I'm going to do comma as the third thing that I want to return. And I'm going to return the third thing, which is number 2, which is going to be the city. So let's run this. Go back and view the log. See, I'm getting Linda 28, Lisa 33, Pete 32. As a matter of fact, I don't even have to return an array of exactly the same size. So maybe what I want to do, I want to take this entire thing with 3 columns and I want to take Linda and say Linda is from Chicago. The next thing should be 27, and then Lisa is from Miami and Pete is from Los Angeles, right? Something like that. So to do this, I could have worked this in one line, but I guess I'm gonna make this multiple lines. So first, let's create that text, which is gonna say Linda is from Chicago, right? So I'm gonna create a variable. I'm gonna call this text output. And then I'm gonna make that variable equal to, so I need that to be Linda is from Chicago, right? So Linda is gonna be row 0. And then I'm gonna add some text, space is from space. And then I'm gonna add the city, which is the third element in this array, which is gonna be row 2, because it's 0, 1, 2, right? And then the second part is new age. So let's say we still want to increase the age by 1. So row 1, second element is going to be the age, 27. And we want to take that and add 1 to it. So now when I have to return it, I'm going to return an array of those two things. So text output, comma, new age. So that's my array. And now if I go back and run this map method, and what we get is Linda is from Chicago, 28. Lizzie is from Miami, 33. Pete is from Los Angeles, 32. So if you're writing a function with a lot of output like this one, it is probably a good idea to separate the function like this and have it as a separate function that does the logic and gives you the return. And then you can use it inside of your map function to get those results. However, very commonly you don't do this. So let me just undo some steps here and get to the thing I did before, right? Before I got this. Actually, that's pretty much it. So in this particular case, if you remember what I did, I just took the same name and I just increased 27 to 28, and then I got the city. Now, another way to do this, instead of doing this whole other function, you can incorporate this inside of this map method right here. Without creating a function and naming it, you can use a function with no name. So I'm going to do function and brackets like this. And again, we're going to pass that row like in here. And then we're going to return that same exact thing we returned here. So like that. Now you could leave this all on a single line like this. So if I save this, I take that and I run this, I'm going to look at my log and you'll see it's doing exactly the same thing as the other one. Now, a lot of time when people do this, they may move this to a new line like this. So this is a very common way you'll see this done, something like that. And that way we kind of have this line separated so we can see what's going on. So you don't have to really create a whole new function generally, but if it's a longer logic, it's best practice to do a function instead of writing it all in one. But if it's something short, you can just do this. Now let's put this in context of Google Sheets. So I'm going to delete this. Let's say I have this data and I want to take all these numbers and divide them by 4. So the return that I should get is, if I take this and divide it by 4, right, is 0.25. So all of these, and that should just be here instead of being on the side. So I'm going to delete this. Let's start a new function. That's my function name. The first thing I need to do, I need to first assign my spreadsheet to a variable. So I'm just going to copy this line. I have explained this line many, many times. That should be fine. So that's our active sheet. Then I'm going to get range. And the range I'm going to get is from here through here. So the first cell is first row, first column, so 1, 1. And then the number of rows is 4 and number of columns is 3. Number of rows 4, number of columns 3. And we're gonna get values. And what this is going to do, it's going to just assign it to an array. Basically, create a variable that will hold that array in it. So I'm gonna call this data. So that's gonna be an array now. Because it's an array, now we can use map on this. So I'm gonna do data dot map. And by the way, before I do this, let's just refresh our memories, how that's gonna show up. So let's just log this out for a second. So if I look at this, see, it's an array, and it's an array of arrays. So again, this is basically like AB. Oh, we're missing something. It says AB doesn't have the number in it. So let me go back and check what I did. Oh, I did 2 here instead of 3. 3 columns, not 2 columns. Run this again. There it is. A, B, and 1, C, D, and 2, E, F, and 3. That's the first row, second row, third row, and so on. It's a 2-dimensional array. So because of that, now we can run our map method on this. And that map method can accept a function. So I'm just going to go as a one-liner here because it's going to be pretty basic. I'm not doing a lot of operations. So just a function inside of this map function. So this is an entire function. See, this is the function syntax, right? It goes inside of this map parentheses right here. So here, this function is going to accept the row. So each line is going to be 1 row. And what we're going to do, we're going to just, what we need to return this A and B is going to be the same. This 1 should be divided by, I don't know, whatever I said, 4, I guess. So I'm going to return an array. And that array should have 3 things in it. The first one is going to be the first row. So that's going to be the first item from the first row. So that's row 0. Comma, the second item is just row 1. Because we're not really doing anything with this first or the second column. Now row 3 is going to be this third column, which is a number. So comma, and we're going to do row 3. And we're going to divide that by 4 as the last one. So we need to assign this to a variable. Call it new data. And now we need to just write this back to our spreadsheet. So I guess I'm going to write it to the same place where it is. You could write it to a different area, but I'm just going to write it exactly in the same position where it was. And to do that, I will have to get that same range that I had before. And instead of get values, I'm going to set values. Make sure you do values, not value. And the values are going to be, well, the new array that I just made. So I don't need this log. Save this. I'm going to run that. Let's look. So we made a mistake. So that didn't work. See, error message. See what's going on here. So, oh, this should be 2, not 3, because it's the third column. I'm pretty sure you were probably screaming at the screen. But there it is. The first column, second column, third column is row 2, not 3. Oh, and now because we don't have numbers, it's not going to work now, is it? 2, 3, 4. Okay, let's go fix this. Run it again. Go back. There it is. We took those, we modified those values, divided by 4, and we'll write that to the screen. Now, you could have done, obviously, other things in addition to that. Let's say what I want to do, I want to have something that will look like this as a first column. And the second column should be this divided by 4 again. So let's create this with our script. So I'm going to go back. The first thing, we're going to have to get the worksheet, and then we're going to get the range of values, which is going to get this whole data to an array. Now what we need to do as our new data, we're going to do map on that array, and then the function is going to get the row. And in this row, what we need to do, we need to concatenate A and B together. So I'm going to say the first column should be row 0 plus row 1. Now, if you're thinking that there could be numbers here and you want to look at these still as text, it might be safer to do something like, let's do an empty text plus the first column and the second column. But for right now, because we only have text, let's keep this simple. So this is just going to be column 1 and column 2 added together. Because it's text, it's just going to concatenate them in JavaScript. And then finally, the other one is just the third column, which is row 2 divided by 4. So now the array I'm going to return is not 3-column array. It's just going to be 1 column here and another column, which is this one over here. So my new data that I'm returning is not the same size. So I have to, let's say I want to place it here. So this is where F is the first row and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 column. So row 1, column 6. Now I have to make sure that's the same amount of rows. So that's in this case 4. And the number of columns is going to be now 2 because we just combined these two together, right? So that's 3 and 2. And we're going to set new data as a value. So if I run this, I go back and look, there is our new array set on a screen with all these combined values here. Now we can improve this a little bit. Instead of hard coding this 4 and 2, which we basically just had to manually count how many rows is that going to be, we can simply take the new data and instead of 4, just get the length of it, and length will basically get how many things we have in that array, and basically each row is going to count just 1, right? So it's going to count number of rows, which is perfect. That's what we need. And then the second one, we need to count number of columns. So we'll first get the first row in that, and then calculate the length of it, and that will give us the number of columns. I go a little more in depth about what this exactly means. I did this a couple of videos ago, so go back and watch those parts and then come back if this is not clear to you. So let's see, this is clean. So I'm going to run this, go back, and there we have it. It still works exactly the same way, and it will automatically just figure out how many columns and rows we have in this thing. So that's a little bit about map function. So one last thing I'm going to do here for now, I'm sure we'll get back to map many times later as we go through different videos. But for right now, I want to go over that example when I went here and I took these numbers and I divided them by 4, right? So one way to do that is the way I did it before. So what I did, I first read this entire range to an array, and then I went through it and created another array. Now another way to do that, I was not really using these columns in that calculation. I was only using this one column to divide it by 4 in that first example. So in that case, I don't really need to read this entire array in a memory. I can only just read this one line in this array. So if I take that, so let me just do this. So that's going to be row 1, column 3 as a starting point. And then it's going to be 4 rows and just 1 column. So still 1, 2, 3, 4 rows, and it's just 1 column. So despite of the fact that we're only getting 1 row or 1 column of data in this case, if I log this out, so you can see what I'm getting, it's still an array of arrays. So see, there is this array that holds 4 arrays in it. It's just each array has only 1 thing in it, which means a lot of the things we do is still going to be the same. So I'm going to still have to do my map method the same way, and I'm going to get the row, only I'm not going to have all these different columns. I'm just going to have row 0 in it, which is basically the first column in each row. If I take that row 0 and divide it by 4, that's what I'm returning. So basically the new data is going to be another one column result of rows, and I still want to return it inside of an array like I did before, even though it's just one value. So now we have row 0 that divided by 4. Now we're going to have this new data. So now we can just write that to someplace. Now, because we did it this way, I don't really have to change anything else here. Well, unless I want to write it over these. But let's say I just want to put it next to it right now. So this is first row, column number 4. Let's do that. First row, column number 4. The remaining part is just going to auto calculate itself to figure out how many rows and columns that is. So I shouldn't need to change anything. So I'm going to run this. That works just fine. Now, if I wanted to overwrite my existing data, I could have just done column 3 here, right? And run this. And there we have it. So that's a little bit about map functions. So again, try to pay attention to this map function. I will definitely advise to practice a little bit on this, because this function is going to be very important when you get to more advanced things in Google Sheets. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.